I never really had goals. I really didn't. I remember I was walking up Fryman Canyon, and I was like, damn, I feel like I should just quit this. And then I ran into my friend, and she said, no, you're not. And I said, no, I'm not. And by the time I got to the bottom of Fryman Canyon, I was back.
Jane Lynch was 35 years old when she nearly quit acting. That's because at the time, she was only landing bit parts. That all changed when she was cast as Christy Cummings, a frighteningly competitive dog trainer in Christopher Guest's film Best in Show, released in 2000. Since then, Jane's been in comedies like The 40-Year-Old Virgin and Talladega Nights. She's won Emmys for her roles in Glee and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. More recently, Jane earned an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Guest Actress in a Comedy Series for Only Murders in the Building. She plays Saz Pataki, one of the great names in the history of characters. Saz is a former stunt double for Steve Martin's character, Charles. The running joke is that she wears the same clothes as Charles, and people always confuse them.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
What up?
The fuck?
My stunt double from Brazos.
Saz Pataki. Happens all the time.
Oh, you're... Well, it's pretty progressive for the early 90s.
Yeah, well, I've been called a groundbreaker, among other things.
Stunt woman. That's badass.
I did some of my own stunts.
Yeah, you rode a bike.
Few actors deliver a funny line with as much edge as my guest today, Jane Lynch. I'm your host, Ben Mankiewicz. This is Talking Pictures, a podcast about movies, about memories, and all the stuff that happens in between. Turner Classic Movies makes this podcast with the streaming service Max, where you can see some of the movies mentioned in this podcast. I drove out to Jane Lynch's Southern California home, where her dog welcomed me. As we sat down for the interview, we realized we were both wearing Chucks and a jean jacket. Obviously, Jane is very stylish. While Jane made us coffee, I couldn't help but wonder how she felt about strangers popping up in her home to talk about movies. Knowing you're going to get interviewed here for like a 90 minutes or whatever it is, an hour, like how do you approach that? I'm not asking you to say whether I'm a burden, but like are these a burden or?
No, the burden is on you because I'm looking at your notebook and it's full of notes and I've done nothing to prepare. Actually, I usually don't prepare for this kind of thing. But for you and for this network, I watched last night, and I don't watch movies anymore, but I watched my two favorite movies last night, Ninotchka with Greta Garbo, 1939, and Camille, most of Camille, 1936, of course, Greta Garbo as well, who I'm fascinated with. And I had a summer of 1990, I think it was, the year she died. I didn't know much about her. And I was backstage rehearsing a play at Steppenwolf in Chicago, and there was a newspaper, a Tribune backstage, and I went to the obituaries, and there's a big picture of Greta Garbo in Anna Christina. And I went, oh my goodness, is she something? I was just taken by her, and there was just, I felt like a soul thing. And I immediately went to the video store and I rented Ninotchka and Camille and Queen Christina, not Anna Christie, that's Anna Christie, Queen Christina. And I watched them and I watched them and then I watched them and then I watched them. And I spent an entire summer watching Greta Garbo.
What was that first draw then if you didn't know her work?
I don't know. It was something really deep though. It was something, when watching Ninotchka last night, it was really funny. It stands up.
And it's just...
How about Melvin Douglas, too? Their back and forth was so hilarious. And boy, she played it so well. She's kind of this dramatic actress who had been a silent star, so she didn't have to do much just with her face, And then she becomes this incredibly kind of profound actress. And she's interesting because she's not, to me anyway, classically beautiful.
That's right, I agree, yeah.
She's kind of got thin lips, no real cheekbones to speak of, but there was something about her, especially in Camille with Robert Taylor. she was so beautiful and so soulful, and the way she played some of those scenes, just I've never seen another actress like her.
I think that in an era of where the studios were selling glamour, right,
Yeah.
and all these glamours, and not all, because certainly Betty Davis fits into this category
Right.
too. But I think she stood out because of the things you're saying. There was a like you just felt probably didn't know her, right? But there seemed like this authenticity to
Yeah.
her that permeated the screen.
And I think what drew me is probably what drew the audiences and Hollywood to grab a hold of her, and they signed her right away.
Yeah.
And that is she's unreachable.
Definitely. Yeah.
And it turns out in real life she was that way too. You just did not get in there, but you wanted to. And her famous line, of course, was, "I want to be alone." And it's funny, in Ninotchka, remember, she said it about 3 times.
No, yeah. I wonder if when she said that, she knew she.
I think
yeah,
so.
Yeah, she knew what
I
it was.
think, and
yeah.
I think that Lubitsch too. He wrote it, didn't he? Not only Ernst Lubitsch.
Yeah, he wrote it and
He wrote
directed
it
it,
and
yeah.
directed it. The writing was just fantastic.
So you had not grown up then as a fan of classic Hollywood movies.
I did watch a lot of classic Hollywood movies. My parents loved them, and of course, when I was growing up, there wasn't. We didn't have VCRs, and we didn't have DVDs and tapes or anything like that. When it showed up on television, you watched it. So The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind. If you stay up late enough, you could watch a Hepburn and Tracy movie, and I loved all of those. When I was a kid, and we would get the Tribune every Sunday, I would grab the TV guide and I would start marking what I was going to read, or what I was going to watch, and I would, plan to stay up all night because I would watch movies all the way through the night. I loved them.
So you came of age again. We're basically the same age. So, but the movies starting. When I say the 70s, what I really mean is starting in 1967. That's when movies changed. So were there movies in that hunk of time from 67 to you going away to college in the late 70s, early 80s that influenced you?
Yeah.
That you went to the theater and you were like, oh man, this was
yeah.
something.
Sophie's Choice. I remember just being devastated at the end of that one. Anything with Meryl Streep, really. She's amazing.
So it's hard to believe that Meryl Streep is, and I actually think she's underrated. Like she's so,
I do too.
Like she's so good, and everybody
Do you
knows
really know how good she is? Because
Right,
she's
right.
Mike Nichols said once, she looks like she swallowed a light bulb. She's a lit up person. She walks into a room, she walks onto a set, she walks in front of a camera and you go, oh, who's that? It's kind of like the Greta Garbo thing.
Yeah, I think so.
You lean forward and you can't take your eyes off of her.
I love that. I didn't know the light bulb line, or I didn't recall it, but he also said, I think it was Nichols, who said, she can do more with her face in 10 seconds than most actresses can do in 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, just little, and that,
So sometimes people are mesmerized just by that you don't see the, like, Devil Wears Prada. You don't maybe see the little kind of the shiftiness there, and Thatcher, and I also like the Westerns. I loved watching Westerns at the Dalton Cinema. Like Hang 'em High.
Yeah.
Remember the Clint Eastwood? Wasn't
course.
that a Clint
Yeah,
Eastwood
it's
one?
Clint, yeah.
And they kept using the word lynching. I was like, that's my name. I was so thrilled. Call out.
yeah, that's funny. But you mentioned Pollock. Like 3 Days of the Condor is.
Yeah.
I just can't get enough of that movie.
You know what I remember him from more than anything is from Woody Allen's Husbands and Wives.
Remembering
he was
Pollock.
in it.
Yeah, he's a good actor.
I thought he was brilliant in that. Oh, I loved him in that. Yeah, he was a good actor.
Yeah, he met Redford. They were actors together in some war film in 1961 that began their friendship that led to 7 movies, of which most of them are pretty.
The Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and the Sting, that whole thing. I mean, that was a family favorite. We loved that stuff. We loved the music. In fact, my father's funeral, as we were leaving the church, we had the big organ go dun 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 dun.
Right, it's a Chicago movie. Right, the Sting.
Was it?
The Sting,
Oh,
yeah, of course,
it was.
yeah.
Yeah. But we loved that Scott Joplin stuff.
Yeah.
Oh.
Your your parents not showbiz folk, but they were
Well, not really.
but kind of, right?
They were kind of.
Yeah.
You know, I think for they loved to sing. They loved to dance. I did not inherit that quality. I'm not very good at dancing.
But you could sing.
Yeah, I could sing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my father was a master harmonizer. He just had a great ear, and as humbly as possible, I have a great ear as well. And they would do shows at church. There was a thing called port of call. So every class, it's a church and a school. So every classroom was a different port of call, and they do a show around. Like their first one was the Irish room, of course, because we're Irish. And they also did the Hawaii room the next year. And then the year after that, maybe they did the Bahamas, or they did, Istanbul, and they would do little shows, music, dancing shows. So here's the neighbor ladies and the neighbor guys, the ladies in fishnets and the guys with little tuxes or whatever. It was so much fun.
So they were performing was definitely
they loved it.
Both of their lives.
Yeah,
part of
especially
it.
my dad. He had a really good voice, and he was great.
What's his name?
Frank.
Frank.
Frank Lynch.
Frank Mankiewicz, my father. Also.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I knew that.
And we named one of our 3 dogs as Frank too.
Yeah, we had a Fran dog, and now we have a Francine dog named after my dad. Yeah.
And what was your mom's name?
Eileen.
Frank
and Eileen. And they make. Do you ever see those shirts, Frank and Eileen? They make
I
broadcloth
have
shirts.
one.
Yeah, I have
totally,
one too. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
it's not them, but
So they did that, but they weren't like saying to you, "Let's,"
No, they did not think it was something a person would do as a career. It's something that's fun. That I remember my mother said, and I tell this story all the time. Hopefully she's okay with it. She's not with us anymore, but she said, oh God, we were sitting at the kitchen table and I was writing letters to agents. I was probably 12 or 13. And she said,
You're writing letters to agents?
To agents.
12 or 13?
Yeah, when I was...
Letters?
Letters, several. I had talked to Ron Howard and Anson Williams on the radio. I called in when they were promoting Happy Days. And I said, how do I become an actress? And Anson Williams said, go to the Screen Actors Guild, get a list of agents and write them, which is kind of not the best advice. And whereas Ron Howard said, do plays in school.
Right. Jumping in here for the youngsters in our audience. From the mid-1970s to the mid-80s, for a decade, the TV show Happy Days was unbelievably popular. In 1977, it was the most watched show on television. Set in Milwaukee in the 1950s, Happy Days followed high schooler Richie Cunningham, played by Ron Howard, and his pals, one of whom was Potsy, that was Anson Williams. And of course, there was the Fonz, played by Henry Winkler. Believe it or not, Henry Winkler is a guest this season on Talking Pictures. Okay, back to Jane.
So anyway, I did what Anson Williams told me to do, and I also was doing Guys and Dolls at school. And I started writing them. My mother sat down and she went, Jane, you are never going to be an actress. And I burst into tears. And she held my hand and she felt terrible. She said, no, who knows, maybe you can be. She said, but not everybody gets what they want. And I think that was a kind of a reflection for, she loved singing and she loved being in plays and stuff. And, probably wanted to do it herself.
Right. She didn't quite get what she
projected all of that on me.
But, I got an 11-year-old daughter, and I have your mom's instinct. I mean, I don't want to make her cry, right? That might have been a little abrupt, but that message of, when you tell a kid you can do anything you want to do, of course, that's not true.
It's not true.
Right, it's not true at all, right?
No.
I mean, so how do you encourage them and give them some dose of realism?
Carol Brady had wonderful advice, and she said, find what it is you do best, then do your best with it. I think that's a brilliant bit of advice.
That is a brilliant bit of
Isn't
advice.
it great?
Yeah.
Are you good at this?
So you write these letters, thanks to Anson Williams, thanks to Potsy. Yeah. You write letters to more than one agent, and do you hear back?
I heard back from one. I sent a letter to Universal Studios casting. That's what I wrote.
You're what, 12, 13?
Yeah. 12. The Dear Casting Department, I am available. My name is Jane Lynch. I'm 12. I live on the south side of Chicago, and I'd be happy to come out there. And they sent me a letter back, and I put it in I have a memoir, Happy Accidents, that I wrote about 15 years ago. And they wrote me back, and it was so nice. It was the assistant to the casting person. Her name was Monique something. And Dear Jane, thank you for your letter. Unfortunately, we don't have a young actors program here to train people, but we wish you the best with your career, and maybe we'll see you when you get a little older or something like that. All the best, Monique so-and-so, assistant to blah, blah, blah. I thought that was just so nice. It was probably the kind of the innocence behind the letter that would perhaps touched her, kind of, I'm available. I live on the south side of Chicago.
I love the willing. I can get out there if you need me to.
If you need me,
Yeah.
I can get out there. I understand there are nonstop flights from O'Hare. No, I didn't.
Yeah, my guess is they don't answer all those letters.
I bet they don't
Right.
answer.
So something about your letter struck.
Yeah, and I was thrilled. And they even wrote "Dear Jamie" instead of Jane. And I wrote in my scrapbook, "Jamie, I think I'll keep it."
Right. It's a good. It's not a bad stage name.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet Anson Williams? You ever tell him?
No, but I did meet Ron Howard.
Yeah.
I met Ron now a couple of times, but the first time I met him was I was doing Jimmy Fallon, and Ron happened to be in 30 Rock doing something else, and so they knew of this story. So I'm talking to Jimmy, and they said, "Tell us about this Ron Howard thing," and so I told them about the crush that I had. I had a huge crush on Ron Howard. I used to draw his face. I used to take pictures of him out of magazines and put, those photo booths where you
So
get
the Happy Days, Ron.
Yeah,
Howard,
Happy
right?
Days, Ron. Where I would put pictures of myself in my scrapbook on either side of him going, pretty foxy, because I was so taken by him. And so they got him to bring me flowers during the show.
That's a lovely
So
little
it was
moment.
great,
Yeah, yeah.
and he was so sweet. He said, "I'm confused by your crush because I'm gay," and I think he was so wholesome.
Yeah.
I think that was what it was. I was attracted to his goodness, and he is a really good man.
It's hard to find anybody who says
Yeah.
anything bad about.
You should
Ron
read his
Howard.
book. Have you read his book with his brother called The Boys, about growing up with their dad?
Clint, right?
Clint, yeah, and growing up with their dad and their mom in Toluca Lake, and it is one of the most beautiful books.
Oh, thank you. I'll read that.
Yeah.
That's really, yeah. So that's nice that Ron and Anson had this effect on you. Although
Yeah.
it seems like you were headed there. Like, I mean, given that feeling you had.
Probably.
So then you're in Chicago, and Chicago's not New York or LA, but it's also not Phoenix. Like there's stuff happening there.
A lot of theater stuff.
A lot of
happening.
theater stuff.
Non-professional stuff. Lots
And
of
much more of that than in LA, for example.
Oh, yeah. It's an actors' town, theater actors' town, Chicago is. Actors, Steppenwolf being kind of the biggest, most successful example of this, but people flock to Chicago who just want to put on plays.
It sounds like you would have been pretty happy if you had never gotten out here. Like, you could have remained in Chicago doing theater. At some point, you would have had to get paid enough to make a living.
By the time I came out here, I knew I wanted to come out here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm done with Chicago. It wasn't that. It was movies were starting to come into Chicago. Commercials were happening in Chicago. So I did The Fugitive.
No.
I was in a couple of other movies with small parts. I did a bunch of commercials. I was doing voiceovers. And so I got the taste of making a living. And there's more of it here than there is in Chicago.
Yes. And this thing in The Fugitive was a small part, but people loved this movie.
Yeah, it turned out to be it was a big hit of a movie. And so to have kind of a supporting part in that was just a big coup.
And in an important scene is the plot.
I solved the liver sample mystery.
Wait a minute. Lentz died August 21st. Half of the samples he approved were signed the day he died. Someone else must have been manipulating this. Someone with access.
That's right. You get him. You give him the information he needs.
Yep.
To prove that he didn't kill his wife.
Yeah.
So you read for that? You auditioned?
No, I was given that part. And this is the strangest thing. I was doing the real live Brady Bunch in Chicago. So Andy Davis, who's the director, his assistant is a Chicago girl, Teresa, not her last name. Pardon me, Teresa, I forget your last name. She was his assistant. She was a Chicago girl, and when they came up with that character, it was kind of added. They got to Chicago and they were ready to shoot, and they added this character in order to help a story, fill a hole in the story. And she said, actually, I think it was a guy. It was supposed to be for a guy, and I have kind of a history of playing men's roles. And she said, I know the girl who can play this. I just saw her in a goofy little play, and he trusted her. And I get a call from my agent, and she has as much bafflement in her voice as my hearing it. She said, so, The Fugitive you got to offer it a part. And I remember they were paying me $8,000, and it was
Good money.
Yeah, it was great money, and it was more money than I'd ever made doing anything. And you have a wardrobe fitting tomorrow. It's going to happen pretty fast. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that was crazy.
And your scene is with
Harrison, with Harrison Ford, and a lot of the script, and I found out a lot of movies go this way. It wasn't like. It was a work in progress. And so we're, about to shoot this scene, and Harrison's not thrilled with it. And
do you remember why?
It didn't make any sense. It didn't make any emotional sense. I remember that it was almost like speaking, when a scene, you need to like fill a hole, and bring the story together. Sometimes it sounds like the actors are speaking like exposition instead of two people talking to each other. And
it's like in a book when they're like, John was angry.
Yes,
I'm angry, said John.
I'm angry, exactly.
Right,
so it was like that.
Yeah.
And so he said, this doesn't sound like how real people talk. And it was raining out, I remember that. And he said, she and I are going to go write this together. And we had just met. He doesn't know that if I can put this together, and so, everybody's slack-jawed because we're ready to go. It's lit. And so we walk outside, and he's got an umbrella, and he puts his arm around me, and we're walking. We go into his trailer. He sits down, and he goes, okay, let's do this, and let's make it sound like people who talk to each other. So we kind of put it together. It was a very small thing. I don't remember it being very long, but, he was right. It didn't have any life to it. And that's where he came up with, he said, Kath, you beaut. And I was like, oh, because we had a relationship now as two actors, and he added that, and that made me just feel so good.
Have a look. What do you think?
Cold normal.
Clearly not the same tissue. And not only did they all come from healthy livers, they all came from the same liver.
Kath, you beauty.
We're going to take a quick break. Coming up, Jane Lynch tells us how director Christopher Guest knew she was right for his movies.
He said, I can tell if someone can do this kind of acting. He said, like within 5 minutes.
By the early 2000s, Jane Lynch was perfecting her improv skills as an ensemble member in director Christopher Guest's films. She got her start in the mockumentary Best in Show, one of the funniest movies I have ever seen. Here she is playing Christy Cummings, a dog trainer, alongside Jennifer Coolidge.
We're going to take that title for the third time, but we can't take anything for granted. There's a long road ahead of us. And I hope that all those people in Romulus, New York, my hometown, I hope all those people who are going to see me take this title for the third time on national television, And I hope that they're all fat, and I hope that
They are all fat.
Yeah, and married to people that they hate. And I hope that they wish that they had been nicer to me.
Christopher Guest often works with a stock company that includes Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, John Michael Higgins, Michael McKean, and for years, the late Fred Willard. In other words, Jane Lynch was working with the best. Guest also cast her in his movies A Mighty Wind, For Your Consideration, and the 2016 film Mascots. Prior to that, Jane made a living like many actors do, making commercials. So I'm wondering whether commercial actors will make the transition to doing scripted stuff as much as happened in the past, because commercials are somehow less important now. Or maybe they're more important because we pay less attention to them. I have no idea. But, but it's a different world.
And it's a different world. Commercials aren't as good anymore.
That's
Let's
right,
just
yeah,
be frank.
yeah,
They're just
well,
not
they're
good.
not. I mean, you can't spend all that money if you know there's not going to get that much payoff.
Yeah,
right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And also, to be a commercial actor, my niece is a very successful commercial actor, and she's really good. You know, when I made as many commercials as she did, I bought a house.
Right. It's just
She's not buying a
not
house.
buying a house. How many commercials did you make?
Let's see. I probably did it. I bet I did a total of 60 commercials, and then in 1999, I did at least 10 that were nationals, and that's when I was able to buy a house. And now, you can't. There are no middle class actors anymore. It's
And no middle class movies and no middle class actors.
right. Yeah.
So what commercials did you do? Give me the.
Sure.
Yeah.
Bank of America with Christopher Guest. No, Washington Mutual with Christopher Guest. I did Kellogg's Frosted Flakes. So this commercial for Chris, as I recall, we didn't know it was Christopher Guest. I think we just kind of riffed, you know, tell us about your feelings about Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, that kind of a thing. And then after 30 seconds, they go, thank you. And so I got called back, and I went to the sign-in sheet, and it said Kellogg's Frosted Flakes commercial directed by Christopher Guest. And I went, oh my God. Oh my God. Because I mean, I knew Waiting for Guffman, and I fell out of my seat watching it. I thought it was so, I knew that it was like, I want to do this. I want to do it. I thought it was a crazy fantasy. And
Had you done, did you do an improv then when you, at that point?
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Had I done, well, sort of. I never felt I was very good at improv. And the Second City stuff that I did were improv sets. So we did set material. We did proven material on the road. We didn't write our own shows. And then at the very end of the show, we would do a couple of games, and I always hated them. I felt I was terrible at them. It was my least favorite part of the show. But it turns out I kind of know how to do this different. It's not like you're looking for the joke. You're kind of riffing. I always say that, like, the Second City improv is kind of masculine. It's like, let's get to the orgasm. Let's do it to get to the joke.
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Huh, yeah.
And the Christopher Guest kind of method is more feminine. It's meandering, and you're not trying to get anywhere. You know, when he edits it, he directs it. He makes the story, the narrative goes somewhere. So, you know, he doesn't like jokes.
He doesn't want a punchline.
He doesn't, except if you're Fred Willard. Fred Willard was allowed to do that because he's brilliant at it. So if you're working with Fred, which I did in, what was that movie called? For Your Consideration. He was the guy I work with. And so he would show up and give me a list of setups to set him up for his joke. Now, if you'll say this, and make sure you say it kind of fast, and no, you want to slow this one down because I'm going to come in with blah, blah, blah. So, you know.
And you do it, right?
And of course you do
right.
it.
Do it for
Of course
Fred
you
Will,
do
yeah.
it. Yeah, you set him up.
In today's Lost and Found segment, we're going to look at a couple of careers that seem to be missing for quite some time. And wouldn't you know it, they both turned up in exactly the same place.
Marilyn Hack made quite the splash in A Song for Reuben back in 1989 for her memorable portrayal of Imogene, the blind prostitute. And you know what they say about blind prostitutes? You really have to hand it to them. We can cut that out. I don't know why I cut that out.
So you get that Tony the Tiger spot, the Frosted Flakes spot, where you guys are, you know, I mean, it looks like a Christopher Guest movie. I mean, I wrote that down in my notes before I knew that Christopher Guest had directed
Oh, you're
it.
kidding.
Yeah, and then because
gosh.
I'm working backwards, I just knew that you'd had these commercials and then as soon as you see it, you're like, oh, this is it. Obviously, this
And
is
that's Sean Masterson with me, who's a really funny guy.
Yeah, it's
Second City guy.
Frosted Flakes are about so much more than just great taste. I mean, there's that, and then there's Tony, you know. Then there's the frosting, and then there's Tony.
Right. Take a picture.
Okay, got it.
Okay,
He looks different.
I think that's a woman.
You're right.
Yeah.
And then he says something to you afterwards. You work together. He likes
Yeah,
your
at
work.
lunch he said, you know, I do movies. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. I said, and he said, maybe we'll work together someday. And I mean, at that point, that's all he needed to do. I didn't even need to work with him after that. That was such validation and such, and you can tell, he's not an effusive guy. You know if he gives a compliment, he means it. You could just tell. So I really took it. I really felt it. And then, of course, I did get to work with him. He invited me to do Best in Show.
So you succeed with the commercial. You get the nice compliment from Chris Guest, and then he's making Best in Show, but you don't get a call.
Right. I didn't even know he was making it. All I know is having pancakes at the newsroom.
The Beverly Hills
in
restaurant.
Beverly Hills. Yeah. And there's a little gym. There was a private gym right next door to it, and he had just worked out, and he came in, and he was getting a muffin to go or something, and he turned around, and I saw him first, and I thought, I'm not going to bug him. But he caught eyes with me, and he said, ah, in a way that only Chris Guest can do. Ah. And so I got up, and I walked over to him, and he said, I'm doing a movie, and why don't we talk today? Can you come by my office?
Today?
Yeah, today, at 5 o'clock at Castle Rock, which was right around the corner. I said, yeah, of course. I'll have to clear my schedule. Nah, I didn't have to clear my schedule. So we talked for a little bit, and he didn't really talk about the movie so much. He didn't, he had some pictures of actors up on his wall, and it was Eugene and Catherine, and he said, I'm thinking of moving Catherine from here, out of this lesbian couple, and in with Eugene, and so I've got Jennifer Coolidge, so, and he said, so I'm thinking maybe I'll put you with Jennifer. And then he said, I can tell if someone can do this kind of acting. He said, like, within 5 minutes. I said, wow. So I don't know if he was saying that he can tell I can do it.
But did you have to read for it then?
No.
So I mean, he knew from the
right,
Frosted
exactly.
Flakes
Yeah.
But he didn't call you.
Oh no,
Reach out to you.
originally, no.
So you had to. So it's both.
He even said something like, "I forgot about you."
So it's both encouraging and incredibly discouraging, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing: what if I didn't eat at the newsroom? What if I didn't have pancakes? See, I just think that the universe finds a way to put people together.
In Best in Show, Jane was scene partners with Jennifer Coolidge. This was before Coolidge became known for the films American Pie, Legally Blonde, and her Emmy-winning role in HBO's The White Lotus. Did you know Jennifer Coolidge then?
I didn't.
No.
I knew of her.
Right.
There was a show called She TV, a comedy sketch show with just women, and it was hilarious. And of course, it lasted 2.5 episodes.
Right, totally, yeah.
But she was in that.
It's weird because women aren't funny. I don't know what you know.
Yeah,
it's so strange. That's what I hear.
Stephen Root did a monologue as Rush Limbaugh about how women aren't funny in that, and in the pilot episode. It was wonderful.
So, Best in Show, and I know it's improvised, but like how much? Like what's that process?
All of it.
We have this fantastic family dynamic going here, and it pretty much mirrors what I grew up with. My father was the taskmaster, the disciplinarian, which is what I do. I'm the mommy slash daddy. That's right.
Like Mr. Punishment.
Oh well, and also reward. But Sherry's responsible for the unconditional love.
And the decorative abilities.
Exactly, the heart and the soul. Which is what my mother did, and that was her job. She was there for the unconditional love, and it worked for my family. Until my mom committed suicide in '81.
So you have total freedom to in this scene.
Yeah.
Do you talk about it first? Like if you're doing the scene with Jennifer, do you talk about it with her?
It depends on who I was. He always gives you the one person you work with. Jennifer and I talked about everything. We were in Vancouver. We met even before Vancouver.
Had she done a picture?
No, she hadn't done a Christopher Guest movie. So we were both green and nervous and, fans and really wanted to do well. And we became very close, and we kind of were very, we bucked each other up a lot. So when we were in, and we talked about our backstory, and we laughed a lot, not just about our characters, but we laughed a lot. And we would take walks through Stanley Park, and it was, Vancouver in the fall, so it rained all the time. And Jennifer is one of those people, she's so full of ideas, and there's so many things going on in her head that she forgets things like umbrellas, raincoats, and wallets. So you know, it was like you have to step up to take care. And I loved being that person for her, you know. I would go back out in the rain because she left her wallet at a Chinese restaurant. And
So Jennifer Coolidge is a lot like Jennifer Coolidge.
yeah,
Right?
she is.
Right.
She
That's
is.
the lovely
And
to
she's
hear.
a very skillful actor. But yeah, she is. And she's more cerebral, I think, than people think. She's
by the way, I think she has to be. There's no way
she
can
has
do all
to
these
be.
things.
She has to be so smart.
Yeah.
And so it was a glorious time with her. It was, we almost like fell in love. We were just, I enjoyed her company so much and loved working with her. And with John Michael Higgins and A Mighty Wind, we didn't have any time because we were working on the music all the time. And I don't know if we would have. I have no idea what our dynamic would have been if it weren't for the fact that, you know, we started several months earlier to work on the music.
Because he wrote a whole show.
Yeah.
He wrote a whole, essentially, Broadway show.
Exactly.
To make a
'Cause
movie
we
about
did
a
tour
fake
it.
Broadway show.
Because we toured with this show. And Chris had said, I don't want any ringers, even though we had a couple of ringers. And I almost called us the New Christy Minstrels, but that's not who we were. And Main Street Singers. So we had a group, and John Michael Higgins took everything he knew about vocal harmonies and crammed it into each song. So it is so precisely and weirdly, I mean, some of the chords, they're the weirdest, most pleasing chords or disturbing chords you've ever heard. And so it was a real challenge to sing this stuff, and we all worked very, very hard. And it ended up just being wonderful.
My mother was the cold north wind. My daddy was the son of a railroad man from west of hell, where the trains don't even run.
But that left you no time to do what you've done with
so
Jennifer.
we didn't talk at all. So I remember the first thing we shot was at a carnival where we were singing "It's Just That Kind of Day," and then there's a scene between Michael and me where we kind of tell the camera our story. So he's hearing my story for the first time, and I'm hearing this for the first time, and it's really funny to watch our responses as he'll like say something that refers to me that I don't know that he's decided
So
about.
he's deciding your backstory.
Right. And then, he decided some things about me, and I decided some things about him. And it's just so funny. It's very yes and, which is, of course, you know, the improv rule.
When I blew town at 15 and ended up in San Francisco, California. And it's at this point in my story that the dark clouds part. Because I met a certain Mr. Wiseman, who gave me a job in his shop. And before long, he tapped me to do some small roles in some of his short films for more mature audiences. Well, I was known for doing a certain thing that many of the other girls wouldn't do.
So going back to something you said earlier, then, that like you're starting to recognize, okay, I didn't like that part of the improv where they were getting ideas from the audience, and we had to. Yeah. But you're good at it. Obviously, you have some facility with it.
I'm better with this kind, where you're.
Where you're a character.
You're immersed in the character, and as Michael would say, you pack heavy.
What does that mean?
I mean, I do more character work on those characters than I do anywhere else. So you know so much about this character that you now can improvise it.
My world opened up because I was invited to join the reformed New Main Street Singers, and that's where I met my man, and before long, I was the new Mrs. Boner.
Isn't that something?
Beautiful story.
I tell you.
So how did Glee come about then?
Let's see. What happened? So what I know of it is that it was written and ready to go, and then Kevin Riley, who was the head of Fox at the time, said, "You need a villain."
You weren't in it.
Yeah, I wasn't in it.
Yeah.
You need a villain in this. And then the lure is, I don't know if this really happened, that Ryan, who I had known for about 10 years, said, her name will be Sue Sylvester, and she will be played by Jane Lynch, which, if that's true, I love it. So Ian Brennan was actually the brainchild behind Glee. He's the one who presented it to the idea.
Producer and writer.
Yeah, to Ryan. And so he went about creating Sue Sylvester. And Ian is from Chicago as well. And there's kind of, he's like the nicest guy in the world, but there's this darkness right underneath it. And I think that I have that too. I don't know if mine is as interesting as his, but he always is able to like look at how could this be a disaster? So he put that into Sue Sylvester. You know, everything is a disaster.
Everything is a disaster.
Yeah, and everything, you know, is a battle that needs to be won, and you know, enemies don't just need to be vanquished; they need to be destroyed and humiliated, and you know, that kind of a thing. Such an extreme character, and obviously funny.
Despite our differences, I just want you to know that you can lean on me if you need to.
Oh, William, I wouldn't dare lean on you. So much grease in your hair, I'd probably slide right off.
And you enjoyed that,
I
obviously.
loved it. Oh
yeah.
my God, I was so grateful for it. I was so grateful to him. I just loved it. I loved playing such an extreme person.
Had you been mean as a character before?
Oh yeah.
You had.
Yeah. I have a history of severe characters.
Yeah. The Glee was the thing that really changed the
trajectory if you will,
of your entire career, right?
It did,
and you
yes.
you were what, like 50 when you got that role or something?
49.
49.
Yeah, almost 50. Crazy.
Were you holding out for that, or were you like thinking, I'm going to have the life I had? It was good before Glee, right?
It was good before Glee.
Yeah.
You know, I never really had goals. I really didn't. Every once in a while, I might get frustrated. I remember I was walking up Fryman Canyon, and as I started to walk, you know, hike it, I was like, damn, I feel like I should just quit this. I don't think anything's gonna happen for me. I was probably about 35. It feels like I should just quit. And then I ran into my friend. Her name is Liza Murray. She's an actress. And she said, no, you're not. And I said, no, I'm not. And by the time I got to the bottom of Fryman Canyon, I was back. I was in the game.
So because it can be an incredibly discouraging business.
It can be, but for the most part, Ben, and I'm serious about this, I don't know if I'm looking back with rose-colored glasses, but I was rarely discouraged because I didn't want anything.
That's why that moment stands out. Is because it was a rare moment where you were thinking.
Yeah, that was a rare moment.
We're taking another quick break. When we get back, we'll have our Super 8, where Jane Lynch reveals the movie that made her sob in a theater. And we're back. Time for the Super 8, where we ask our guests a series of set questions about movies they've watched, movies they've loved, and movies they'll never forget. Okay, what's your most memorable movie watching experience?
Seeing Waiting for Guffman at an independent theater, small theater in Soho, New York, and I sat next to two gay guys having their first date. One of the guys didn't laugh at all, and the other guy couldn't stop laughing. And I thought, this relationship next to me is not going to work. But I bonded with the guy who laughed. We were sitting right next to each other, and we were elbowing each other, and it was as if, and it was brand new, you know. I mean, Spinal Tap had been, you know, years prior, but I had never seen anything like it.
I wonder if that guy knows now. He was like, you know, I had a great experience waiting for company. I was sitting next to Jane Lynch. We just were like, we loved it. We were both laughing. Yeah, she wouldn't remember that either.
Yeah, and I do.
Movie you loved in high school?
In high school. Oh, The Sound of Music. I know it was probably on the third run, but we would go, it was playing at the River Oaks Theater, and we'd arrive for like the 11:45 in the morning film, and we would stay. And then my mom picked us up after the like 7 o'clock showing. And we did that almost every day. We knew every breath of that movie.
You think you've seen it over 100 times?
I'll bet I've seen it over 100 times, yeah.
Movie you'd show to someone you were interested in? Like someone you want to...
You have to be, it's like a test.
Mm-hmm.
Private Benjamin.
Oh, that's great.
I still laugh very, very hard at Private Benjamin.
I just watched Private Benjamin again within the last year with my daughter.
Yeah.
So it's
good, right? How about Eileen Brennan in that?
Oh,
my gosh.
Eileen Brennan's amazing.
Whew, and Craig T. Nelson, he was very good too. He's hilarious.
Imagine a vast warehouse where all the movie props ever in any film are stored, and you're a thief. What do you steal?
What do I steal? Melvin Douglas's desk in his apartment in Ninotchka.
I love that you're like most. You're the first person who's going to need a truck to get what they steal out of this warehouse. Melvin Douglas, would you work at that desk?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was totally of an era.
Mother's favorite movie? Did your mom have a favorite movie?
Yeah, what would have been? My mom's favorite movie would have been The Sound of Music as well. Yeah.
Did you watch it with her sometimes?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah. We would rent it. We would sometimes it would show on television. Be like a special showing. Yeah.
Well, we show it on TCM too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so you would like watching that movie with your mom.
Yeah.
Like that would be a nice moment.
Oh yeah. And also my mother and I loved Funny Girl. Yeah. And that movie was a big deal for us.
What about your dad?
My dad, Bridge Over the River Kwai.
Yeah. It's good.
And probably The Big Sleep. And he loved Bing Crosby, White Christmas. We loved our musicals in the Lynch household, White Christmas.
All right, the last two here. Movie makes you cry without fail?
Do
you cry, by the way?
Yeah. What is the film with Deborah Winger and where she dies?
The Terms of Endearment.
Yeah, Terms of Endearment. Yeah, that one. That one kills me.
Did you see it in a theater?
I did see it in theater, and I saw it with my dad. And I don't really cry in front of my dad. And when the little boy comes in, and to say goodbye to her. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah. No, it's
and the kid is pretty destroyed.
Yeah.
And she says to him something like, "I think we're doing pretty good."
Yeah.
Yeah. I cried the whole way home.
Why don't you cry in front of your father?
I don't know. I think I felt embarrassed to cry in front of him. And I remember he was driving me when he looked over. I could feel him look over, and he put his arm around me. He said, there, honey.
Oh, man, so he's trying.
And I was like, trying not to show him I was crying.
This one is, I think, easier. Movie makes you laugh without fail.
Eileen Brennan. I mean, I'm sorry to keep choosing the same ones, but Eileen Brennan in Private Benjamin, where she's drunk and she comes in and makes them all wake up in the middle of the night, and she says, "I want this place to be, clean," and then she says, "From the ceiling," and then she takes her whip and she slaps the floor and she says, "To the lolum."
You're all gonna scour every inch this rat's nest. Inside out, I mean the bed frames, the window ledges, the linoleum. You understand me?
In Ninotchka, there was an exchange last night that just cracked me up when Melvin Douglas first meets Greta Garbo on the street, and she says, "Must you flirt?" And he says, "Well, I don't have to. I find it natural." And she says, "Suppress it."
Where are we?
Where are we? Now, let me see. Where are we? Ah, here we are. There you are, and here am I. Feel it?
I'm interested only in the shortest distance between these 2 points. Must you flirt?
Well, I don't have to, but I find it natural.
Suppress it.
It's so quick that one of the first things I learned at TCM was about the Lubitsch touch, right? That's what they say, and it's like indefinable.
Yeah,
but that's it.
It's that soft touch.
It's that soft.
And I was surprised to see it in this movie because it's 1939, and you think of everything being kind of corny and broad, but boy, there were some really quick, one right after the other.
I think the line, if I'm remembering correctly, is that when Lubitsch died, I don't remember, I'm going to get it wrong entirely, but it doesn't really matter. It's some director says, "Oh my God, no more Lubitsch," and Billy Wilder says, "Oh, no more Lubitsch movies." Like that's the
yeah.
Like that's the
that's
a recognition of the
that's
loss.
the greatest tragedy. Yeah.
Jane, this has been amazing. It took a long time, so thank you so much.
Oh, it was
Thanks for your
great.
patience. Thank you. It was really a pleasure.
Oh, I really
remain
enjoyed
a
it.
huge fan, and
Thanks.
so thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great.
It's great.
I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
Certainly.
So many.
Yeah.
Suppress it.
That was fun, obviously. I'm going to watch Ninotchka again tonight. Garbo, her 3 Russian comrades, Melvin Douglas, and the Lubitsch Touch. It has it all. Jane is the second of our guests to recommend Ninotchka. It was in Bill Murray's Super 8 as a film he'd show someone he's interested in. If you haven't seen Ninotchka from 1939, check it out immediately. Garbo laughing is the perfect way to start the new year. Speaking of 2025, we're going to take a 2-week break for the holidays. We'll be back January 7th when Henry Winkler joins me to talk movies. For now, though, from all of us here at Talking Pictures, check that, from most of us here at Talking Pictures, have a relaxing and joyous holiday season. And in the words of George Coulouris, as Mr. Thatcher in Citizen Kane, and have a Happy New Year. That's our show. Thanks for listening. You can find many of the movies we talked about on the streaming service Max. We made a list for you. It's in our show notes. James Kim produces and edits Talking Pictures. The show is booked by Noea Murphy, Susan Bisak, and Missy Burns-Halpern. Glenn Matullo mixes each episode. Production support from Phil Richards, Yaakov Friedman, Liz Winter, Nicole Hill, and Cameron Kell. Angela Carone is our executive producer. Special thanks to Michael Gluckstad, Allison Cohen, and Kenya Reyes from the Max Podcast team. I'm Ben Mankiewicz. See you next time.